All right, thanks everybody for being here. Very excited about this panel. Great group of guys right here to chat about some of the topics that we have on hand today. First and foremost, start with introductions. Steve Bagdasarian, Vice President of Business Development from Fixu. Very excited to be in Seattle for the first time where it's not snowing or raining, so I was very happy about that. And why don't I let the panelists introduce themselves as well?
Sure. Is this the right level? Yeah. Good. Okay. Bryant Lee, Facebook, work for our PMD team, which is the Preferred Marketing Developers. We basically work with 200 plus developers in the areas of pages, apps, ads, and insights to help make marketing easier and more efficient on Facebook. In particular, our team works specifically on a lot of our mobile initiatives, as well as our growth and DR initiatives.
My name's George Meredith. I'm with Google. Basically, I'm the business manager for our mobile apps network. So that was AdMob. It's inside AdWords now. And I'm from the advertiser perspective. So basically, people looking to run ads on our mobile apps.
Awesome. So one of the things I'm really hoping to get out of this panel today is a little bit of a discussion around, just the shifting trends from, the publisher and platform perspective, and the growing need for transparency in our space. But first and foremost, there is this movement towards greater demand control. Publishers looking for more direct revenue, quality versus quantity. I'd love to get your perspective, and George, maybe we can start with you. But how do you see the role of the platform and the publisher changing in this ecosystem now?
Yeah, sure. So I think from the publisher perspective, user acquisition is getting even more important. So it's kind of an interesting balance where I see studies that 75% of your revenue is coming from in-app purchases, but to get those people in the app, you got to do acquisition. And then it's kind of like, what's the most effective ad units to kind of run to get the inventory? So the trends I'm seeing is, I think, less ads, but more impactful ads. So we've kind of done studies and publishers who kind of do like full screen interstitial ads. It's almost like the equivalent of running one banner ad. So I think we're going to see a movement toward kind of segmenting audiences, trying to get more users, and then basically kind of running higher impact ads. So I think we'll see a more quality shift. And then on the transparency front, I think if you're a good quality publisher, you want people to know about your inventory. Buyers there's so many shady places to get inventory. I think if you're a quality pub, you want to be kind of on exchanges, you want to be open, and you want advertisers to know that you have good quality traffic, good quality ad units. And so I just see kind of the industry getting more transparent and sort of better sort of quality ads and really doing better kind of user acquisition.
We agree as well. I agree as well. So from Facebook, it really starts with the advertiser and solving a real advertiser need. Just in this case, let's say app discovery, so mobile app install ads is a hot topic nowadays, but it's really understanding how do I get my app discovered? And then for us, just building the right products to make sure that we can help solve not only the volume, the quality, but as well as the cost issue. For us, we see some of our most savvy advertisers really moving very aggressively towards quality, which is why measurement is such an important part of the platform and an important part of what we're working on and working to improve. As it relates to kind of our products, we obviously have our own tools in addition to the partners that you saw yesterday, the PMDs like Ampush, Shift, Nanigans. We also have our own tools, CreateFlow, Power Editor, that allow you to buy directly on Facebook as well. And there's a lot of that we're doing to improve those interfaces as well. So I think just being able to help make it easier to buy on our platform, we have a very big simplification initiative that we're really focused on. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible and digestible. And then I guess around the transparency question, I think exactly to what George was saying, I think we want to make sure that advertisers know exactly what they're getting. And so we very much believe in transparency and providing that insight to not only the strategies that you're using to buy ads on Facebook, but also just the performance downstream. But that said, I think, and this is always a topic that is a frequent topic, is we always try to balance anything we do on the ad side with user sentiment. So we need to make sure that users aren't being spooked out by ads or making sure that they think that relevant ads are being served to them. That's the reason why we're spending a lot of time and resources on improving our targeting, providing more granular targeting, so that you can not only reach, so more importantly is that you can reach the right users at the right time.
Great. And actually, Bryant, to kind of build on some of the points that you made, one of the things, whether we, depending on where you sit in the ecosystem, you love it or you hate it, maybe a little bit both at times, but the question around accountability, and specifically what's interesting, coming from a little bit of a display background and doing mobile for a long time, I see this channel as being incredibly scrutinized for accountability. And, Is this the era of accountable media, and we're being led from a mobile perspective? How do you see that scrutiny around the accountability of ad spend really, transforming everything?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, just building on the transparency side of it, I mean, we do make sure that the advertisers know what they're getting, just from a cost and performance perspective. We do things, and we do support things like view tags on our platform. I think it will, and mobile is a little bit just more difficult to measure some of that, and I think that'll change over time. But for us, it's very much a priority and something that we want to make sure that the advertisers, again, know exactly the ROI that they're seeing from our platform.
Yeah, I heard a funny, I had an advertiser tell me last night that, so basically, they were going out and they just wanted installs for their new app, and so the space is so kind of confusing because you might work with one install provider, and then they broke out that deal to other places to get inventory, and so all of a sudden this app developer was getting practically death threats from users being like, why are you showing ads to me? Like, I'm getting push notifications about your app when I'm trying to use my phone. And so this advertiser had no idea that his ad that he done with this network got brokered out to that network that worked with some advertiser that's doing push notifications that were pissing off users. And there's just so much craziness going on right now that, yeah, you got to cut through it all and be very transparent, or just, it's going to get really into shady areas. So, we're all focused on the user and basically good quality ads, not being invasive, and really we want, users love apps, and we want to be in a position at Google to show them apps they love, and I'm sure Facebook is exactly the same way. And we got to get away from this just drive installs at any cost. Who cares if the user's going to use it or not? To more of a, let's focus on great content and finding great users for that content. And I hope sort of the industry moves that way. And I think it will as people get off this game the rankings type play.
So, George, to that point, what's interesting is the notion of premium. I've heard it a little bit over yesterday, and talked to some people earlier today about the idea of premium and the shifting notion of what really is premium and what's not. Do you see the standards of how we look at inventory adjusting as well? With the rise of programmatic and the need to look for more quality efforts when it comes to everything from performance campaigns to brand campaigns. Do you see that notion of inventory, of how we view premium adjusting in this world?
Yeah, it was always, I remember in the early days selling, our teams would take out sort of, these apps that were getting a lot of users, maybe a photo sharing app or an app just like movies, and say these are premium audiences, but these advertisers had never heard of these apps, and they're like, no, we just want the New York Times app. But you're like, or the Discovery Channel app, or it's like, well, that's, users are on Flipboard, they're on other things. So I think it's hard to determine whether an app is premium. You really have to look at the audience, because there's tons of new apps every day. So our vision of premium, I think, is really going to be around the user and the user audience. Maybe there might be some device, if you're on a really high-end device. But yeah, we do segment, we don't ever want to bring in oh, this is some scandalous app or some throwaway app. But in the whole bucket of quality apps that, not every advertiser is going to know all the apps, but they have quality audiences. And so we try to position our audiences in targeting over well, are you buying the New York Times versus, you're buying some new, food app that you've never heard of. but has a great audience.
And one of the great things, been coming from a buyer's perspective, is the idea of targeting, right? And it's always a hot topic. And as mobile's become more and more fragmented, at the same time, there's been great offerings specifically from the platforms around targeting opportunities. Bryant, would love to get your perspective. Obviously Facebook, there's always a large amount of targeting criteria that an advertiser can tap into. Are people doing it well, or are we almost in a state of paralysis? I mean, which way do you see the market kind of going with that?
Yeah, we have a lot of targeting options. As you know, I think if you take all our different ways to target and buy on Facebook, there's like hundreds and hundreds of thousands. I think it's over 600,000 ways and permutations. But yes, targeting is, I think, one of the things that is key to our platform and one of the huge value propositions of our platform. Advertisers are learning, are getting much better at doing this. And it's just going to come over time with just as more and more people come onto the platform and actually see the ROI and see the value that the platform can provide. We typically do recommend that people start very kind of broad, and then as they start their broad audiences, they can start to figure out who are the valuable users, and then they can get more narrow and narrow. So you can start off with things like broad category targets, and then move more into things like precise interests. But I think where a lot of the cream of the crop and where we're seeing a lot of the advertisers right now getting a ton of value on is using things like custom audiences, where you can leverage, if you have a large CRM base where you have email addresses or Facebook user IDs or phone numbers, you can specifically target these audiences. And so getting really, really smart, having a very strategic and deliberate way at how you want to cut and segment your data, and changing and adapting your creative and messaging to those users to increase ROI, increase conversion, increase ROI is something that we're seeing over time. And there's a lot of education that needs to go along with it. Our sales team is doing incredible, and our account team is doing an incredible job with that, and as well as our partners like the PMDs, which have been instrumental in helping to scale a lot of our advertisers and the platform overall.
Great.
Yeah, I'd say for targeting, the interesting thing about targeting, so Google has a network business where essentially we have like 300,000 apps that run our ads. These would be like banner ads in the app or full screen apps. And the value of the network business really is in how can you enable targeting, so how can you understand that audience and make it easier for people to buy. We also have an exchange business where it's like you don't need any of our targeting. I just want to reach these devices, and I'm going to bid on a device ID or a IDFA. So we really have two businesses, and in our network business, yeah, it's all about targeting, and essentially what you want to do is have some secret sauce there so people keep buying on the network. And yeah, we do a lot of similar things. I mean, Facebook, obviously the king, but we're starting to work in a lot of data from our Play Store, data from some of our owned and operated apps like YouTube to make our targeting better, so you can really get good quality users on our network and don't have to just kind of like buy blind on an exchange.
So George, you mentioned the exchange, and it'd be crazy to kind of go through the panel and not have to bring up the topic of programmatic. Obviously, Google's made a lot of investments on that front. Bryant, Facebook obviously has a commitment towards FBX, but in general, the movement towards programmatic. I mean, are we here? Is the power of machine learning really going to take this whole media landscape to the next level? What's your perspective?
Well, so I met somebody last night who has 500 million device profiles database. So they have a database on 500 million IDFAs or device IDs and profiles with those. And so I was shocked. Like, I didn't realize that companies had started to do that. I mean, they do this on the web with like Blue Kai and others. They build profiles off cookies, but I really hadn't realized it had gotten so big for a few very, very large players. And so those guys are hungry for buying on exchange. MoPub's done phenomenally well, being, I think, the first really big exchange. And now we're starting to expose, IDFA targeting and other things in our exchange. And so I think you're going to have two classes of buyers. You're going to have these guys that are massive, that have these huge databases, that know exactly the device IDs they want to bid on. But not everyone's going to be that big, and the privacy things are not all that clear. And so I think you're going to have the network business, but really sophisticated guys have already done this, and they're really just hungry for Google. I mean, we've got like 5 billion impressions a day that run through our network, so it's like, yeah, I'm definitely going to see people jump onto programmatic because it's already there. It's already there. I was really surprised.
Yes, from our side, definitely we see a shift as well to programmatic, but I think in our perspective it's still relatively early. We just need to figure out how it works on our platform and making sure that the performance that the advertisers are seeing the performance that they want. We obviously have our own exchange in Facebook Exchange, but it's only available for desktop, and we're slowly just rolling that out. Still to be determined whether we want to open that up for mobile or not, so there's still just some discussions going on there, but I think overall, yeah, we do see that, but I think we're just taking it one step at a time.
Great. As an industry, I think we're growing up, right? And one of the things that I know we work with you guys, and a lot of people in this room work with, amongst each other, is the shift towards value, right? ROI, LTV. Are we there? Is the market really moving in that direction? I mean, how do you see that really impacting, both the market and both, what you guys offer from your company and your platform perspective?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing a shift. I think it's still early, and I think some verticals are potentially a little bit better. Gaming is really, really great ROI. E-commerce is getting there. Brands we're even having conversations with brand on that side, but ROI is very much what we're focused on. I think when we first launched mobile app installs, a lot of the conversation was around how can I get the lowest CPI? I want the lowest cost. I want the lowest cost. But then as we started working with these advertisers, Poshmark is an example where they're seeing 3x ROI, and now they're spending 90% of their acquisition spend with us because they're seeing the value associated with it. And I think for us, it's just actually getting the story behind that, making sure that people understand the value of it, which again is the reason why we're investing a lot of time and resources in drawing out those insights and working with the right partners to make sure we're providing that insight. I think it will just happen over time. It's complicated. As we all know, mobile measurement on mobile is somewhat fragmented, and the rules are always changing. But this is something that again, we believe is super important, and I think it's only going to increase over time.
Yeah, and I think, for us, I think partnering with HasOffers has been great. They're helping advertisers solve some of these problems. I think a lot of advertisers have rushed to try to measure lifetime value, but we still see a lot of problems early on in just attribution, like where did this user come from? I mean, there's still, Google has been slow to adopt a lot of the measurement standards. Now we're getting there for our network, but we had this time where it's device fingerprinting. Well, that's not exactly the most accurate way to do attribution. It's 80% at best, maybe 90% depending who you talk to, and there's problems with look back windows and you click on more ad from different sources. How do you attribute? There's all these problems. I think with attribution we're still figuring out, and I think we need to come to standards on that, and then really get clear paths. And I think that it's a problem HasOffers is solving, others are solving. So we're working with these partners, and then once we have that kind of clear attribution model set, then it's really nice, okay, now let's start to look at lifetime value. And people like King.com, Supercell, they're doing great jobs at measuring this. But what's the LTV of a Expedia download? Do you look at the first 7 days? Do you look at the month? What if I download the app and don't book for 30 days? Am I a zero value user? So we're seeing a lot of people try to come up with metrics to figure out how value I might become for some of these things that might be more longer term, larger purchases that I'm not going to maybe download and immediately start spending money. So there's a lot to be worked out, and our advertisers are I think we've come a long way in the last 6 months about attribution, and I'm kind of excited to see the next round now that we've kind of got some standards worked out.
So from a standards perspective, you mentioned the role of third parties, right? And obviously, we need a lot of standards. Are those standards, do you see them being more driven by the platforms themselves? Do you see the role of the third parties really stepping up and helping dictate kind of the growth and focus in that particular area? what really is the role of the third party in your mind? I mean, you touched on it a little bit, George, but there's both big investments on behalf of both your platforms, and from a company standpoint, from a financial standpoint, the role of third party, is this going to be what solves everything, or is it going to come from people like you guys?
I mean, well, so Google started out with a very much like we have our SDK and we do these like standards, and then we started to talk to like large agencies and found out that they were working with upwards of 300 ad partners in a given year, and so when you're working with 300 ad partners, you really need to have kind of one solution. So I don't know if like we've definitely established what all the standards and what everyone's going to use, because this is still sort of like a really fast and changing environment. But yeah, we are seeing more and more clients use HasOffers, use solutions like them, and I think with Apple, what Apple did with IDFA, that helps, and then Android will do stuff. So I think we're moving to a good spot, but we're still there's still a lot of options out there, and there's still a lot of discrepancies, and the way you track versus I track versus Google Analytics versus Omniture, like you try to compare reports and it can barely match up. So we're still a long ways to go, but I think people are starting to figure out why we all have discrepancies in reporting, and trying to kind of let's do a standard and use the same things. But I see reporting all day that just doesn't match up at all from sources, so we're still a long way.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's still early as it relates to kind of standardization, but in terms of the role of third parties, I think while both of us would love to see everyone spending all their dollars with each of us respectively, we know that's not the state of the ecosystem now. It may change over time, and I think it could change quickly, to be determined. But I think where we see a ton of value is that they are buying across, tens, hundreds of different ad networks, and they need a place where they can understand who's performing well. That's an advertiser need, and that's someone needs to solve that. And they need a neutral third party that has very deep analytics, can do the cohort analysis, funnel analysis, attribution across, again. So I think we've seen a lot of our larger advertisers work with third parties like HasOffers, and see a ton of value in their platform. So.
Great. And just to kind of leave everybody on a good note, would love to know from your guys' perspective, and if you could both please answer, what are people doing well? What are advertisers doing well? What are some best practices that we should take into consideration? I mean, there's definitely a change in the market. There's some exciting stuff on the horizon for both your companies and what people are doing right now. But what are some best practices we can leave people with?
Yeah, so best practices or things that we see people doing well is, I think measurement is probably the top, if not up at the top of that. Just really understanding the value that you're driving. If you don't understand the value of the users you're getting, I guess what's the purpose? Great, you got a cheap install, but you just paid for something, you don't know if there's actually generating money for you. That just doesn't make any sense. So I think for us, is the ones who are the most savvy and really scaling the best are the ones who are focused on measurement first. The second is just creative optimization. At least on our platform, it's a very rich, native, immersive experience in how people are actually interacting with the ad on Facebook. So people who keeping their creative really fresh, rotating it very frequently, like 5 types of creative over 2 weeks, and making sure that creative is targeted or accommodates exactly who you're trying to target, I think is super important. I think a third piece is just leveraging the targeting and the capabilities that you have in front of you. Again, the ones who are doing this well are really leveraging things like custom audiences and getting very strategic about how they segment and how they go after, how they bid, how they manage creative for their particular audiences. And then lastly, certainly not least important, is testing. You just got to test the crap out of everything you do. Some things work well, some things don't. It could vary between week to week, it could vary month to month, who knows, but I think testing and understanding actually what's working well on a regular basis and making changes and optimizing is actually critical to success at least on our platform.
Yeah, so I saw so we used to have a lot of people that just wanted installs, and then I saw the last Business Insider, it said that you need upwards of 75,000 to 100,000 installs a day to kind of crack your way into the iOS sort of top 10. And so that's probably a budget of well over 100,000 a day. And so unless you're massive, you're really not going to take that approach. Unless you kind of already have the volume, you just need to give yourself an extra push. So we're seeing moving away from sort of a volume game, and now it's like Bryant said about quality acquisition. And I think the creative part is really good. So we did a study, and so I think on the web, a lot of people do like flashy ads, try to get your attention, because I think various studies will say ad blindness is as high as 50%, maybe higher. But on mobile, what we saw is 91 to 100% of people see the ads. Like they see the ad, and we did an eye tracking study, and it's like average was 4 seconds that they looked at the ad. And so we've had some partners come tell us that users actually read the ad creative, which was kind of interesting, because you normally think of like online, let's just have like some flash, like just come at the user, just distract them, let them click. But we actually, what the creative point is we have an image and a text ad, and actually some of the best performers use our text ad format, and they actually write good ad copy. So, if you just come in and say, here's my travel app, it's free, it does really poorly to like, this helps you book a quick vacation to Florida or something. So we are seeing the creative, and I think you do have an advantage with mobile that people do pay attention to the ads, they do actually read them. So the creative refresh is actually, I think, sometimes an afterthought, but yeah, it actually really, really matters quite a bit, especially when you got the user's attention like you do in mobile. Other best practices, yeah, I mean, definitely the measurement, and taking the time to understand kind of like why you might have discrepancies and not getting too frustrated, and kind of, understand like how things are being tracked, have good analytics. And the other thing, I think I kind of like those are the big things with like creative and buying smartly. And then, the ROI attribution for sure. Like, let's be clear where the users are coming from. And I think it's just take a thoughtful approach. You really do have the user's attention, and right targeting. Oh, the other thing I did want to mention, which I thought was really cool. So, Gree did a study. It said 40% of their revenue on Android comes from 2 devices. So almost very few people do device targeting on our network. But here's like an advertiser that's really digging into their reporting and looking at like, oh wow, there's thousands and thousands of Android devices, but my revenue is coming from a handful of devices. So there's just things to like be considered and look at your data, because a lot of people just don't even look at the data, and they don't really realize what's going on. And some of those Android devices where they're more profitable than the iPhone devices, where there's like kind of like a misconception like, oh, all my revenue comes from iOS, nothing on Android. Well, it's like, well, yeah, you got to segment Android into different groups and cohorts, and yeah, just be thoughtful and look at your data.
I completely agree on the device side, especially. I think that's a great point. We do see difference in performance across platforms as well as across devices. So getting very smart about that and leveraging that in your bidding strategies is I think, very, very important. So, yeah.
Awesome. So with that, I want to turn it over to you guys for any questions that you might have for Brian or George.
Hey, my name is Dave. I don't want to give you guys a hard time. Thanks for coming here, but I wondered what your position was on fraud within Google and Facebook, especially with AdMob. Affiliates it's always talked about with affiliates, and it's not often talked about with Google and with Facebook, and just wanted to know what your take was on it and what kind of steps are coming up.
Well, I can tell you, so I deal with this. This is a problem everywhere, right? Not just mobile. But we've done a few things. So first off, like our ads, you actually have to click our ads twice to actually click through. Like if you don't hit like a specific down button on our ad, it actually slides over another button you hit to actually confirm the click, to kind of get around people that might put their ads next to the gameplay of an app. We saw that early on, and the other thing is we monitor click-through rate aggressively. I think our spam team at Google is probably it's got to be one of the best in the world, and they are so aggressive, and it's an entirely separate group that operates kind of without any influence from publisher groups or advertiser groups, and so they constantly monitor click-through rate, and your account will get suspended very quickly if we see any aberrations from standard deviation of click-through rates or anything like that. So we're really aggressive about it, and I know it happens, and we see it, but we do a lot to kind of watch it. I don't know about other types of fraud. I was primarily talking about click fraud, but I mean, we monitor our network all the time to like make sure, no one's doing that kind of spammy stuff with our ads.
I mean, I'm not a fraud expert, so this is not my expertise, so I probably can't comment too much on it, but I know it's something that we take very, very, very seriously. Our ad serving is on Facebook right now, so like, we can be engineers are rock stars, and they're doing an awesome job with it. So I think it is something that we take seriously, and we'll continue to do so, and there's always additional work that we're doing to invest in making it better, so.
Hey, question for Bryant. So we've been experimenting with Facebook retargeting, matching to our database. We've had challenges actually measuring conversion because we don't know what the match rate is. Facebook actually doesn't tell us how many people are actually matched to our database, and therefore we can't really measure conversion. So do you have any plans for making that more transparent?
Are you talking specifically about custom audiences?
Yes, like basically matching to our database.
Yes, it's a good question. I actually don't have the answer to that. I think from a transparency perspective, it is something that we're consistently working towards. I guess find me afterwards, and I'll try to let me get some more details, and then I'll follow up with you afterwards. So.
Something that sort of sparked a thought in my mind when you were talking about people actually reading the ad creative. Obviously, that kind of made me think about Twitter a little bit in terms of the promoted tweets and that sort of thing. How do you guys think that Twitter and LinkedIn are going to enter into this mobile market, and what do you think their possibilities are from the other side of the fence?
There it is.
I know it's interesting, and it Facebook falls into it, and something we're interested in is, with Twitter is interesting. You get that social uplift, which is so like amazing. So I know that our teams have experimented, even buying our own ads on Twitter and seeing the kind of retweets and the social uplift. So I think it's a really powerful product, but you got to be real thoughtful. Like I think what Facebook's doing is nice with not overwhelming the users with a lot of ads. So I think that's the balance, and I think that's being worked on. But we know when you do it right, we've seen them have really, really powerful kind of the social effect. But then it's that balance, right? Like I think Twitter got a little bit of heat for doing some TV ads lately that people thought were like not genuine. So I mean, you just got to walk that line. But it's something that I think can be very, very powerful.
I agree. I mean, they're smart companies. They're very successful companies, and they'll figure it out. But again, I think similar to us, it's still really early. Like we're still trying to figure out what's working well, what's not working well, and things change all the time. But I mean, they're great companies. I think they'll do great.
Hi, Brian. I have a question about Facebook in terms of B2B area.
Mm-hmm.
I know you have a lot of user base, but we tried to do some advertisement on Facebook, and we don't get much results because our target audience is typically large enterprise management team. So I know they are on Facebook, but I don't think their interest, once they get on Facebook, their mind is off work. Sure. I don't know if Facebook has a plan to get those people to create another side of the world in the Facebook where their mind is not so much social side, just business side of it.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily about that, but I think in general, the power of our targeting is I think one of the big pieces is reaching the right people, and an important part of being successful is reaching the right people in the right context. So understanding, I guess, for some of your enterprise customers, what's the message that's going to resonate with them? I don't know exactly your business per se, but I'm just trying to determine, in the context of how they're using Facebook, whether it's on mobile or on desktop, and understanding kind of what their mindset is and trying to figure out how you tailor your messaging to those particular users or your core segment, I think will be very important, and I think we have the targeting options to be able to do that. It's just a matter of, I think, how you approach it.
And as a buyer's perspective, I have to agree that B2B is on Facebook. There's definitely a lot of opportunity. We've seen a lot of success with clients that we've run campaigns for on the platform. So Thank you guys very much. Thanks everybody for your time, and feel free to grab either of these two gentlemen in the back after the panel. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.